Hi everyone, I'm Stellar Magnet and I'm part of Black Sky. Today we're going to explore a potential pathway for how we can minimize dystopia with large-scale networks of cooperation. What is the origin of dystopia, you may ask? The story goes like this. The crypto ecosystem is currently captured by grabby reptilians. I'm talking about the blood-infusing, shape-shifting reptilian humanoids from Silicon Valley. I mean the Alpha Draconis star system. Some of these reptilians have morals that are aligned with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but I'm not talking about that subclass. Instead, today, I'm discussing a variety that is highly extractive with questionable morals. Let's call them the grabby reptilians. These reptilians are harvesting energy from crypto-anarchists, their latest addiction. Crypto-anarchists give off this energy signature of rebellion, and that taste is very much in fashion in the underbelly of the grabby reptilian world. They have an organization formula that they love. It's a Delaware C Corp, Cayman Foundation, DAO, and it keeps them in the equation of control. Okay, so I'm going to take a step back now. Is there such a thing as humanity, or are we all just different alien species that have maybe originated from different planets with different economic systems? Are we lab rats in an alien zoo? Can we shift the game and turn the dial when it comes to how an organization is funded and governed to reduce the control of the grabby reptilians? To answer the questions about humanity's origins? So here's a quick glimpse of a plan that I have channeled from what I deem to be much less ungrabby variety of aliens. So the first point is define a new organization model that's better than the grabby reptilian formula. The second point is create a new fund that's able to make a dent in rewiring the Terran markets where this new organization model is proliferated. 3, you create better tools that minimize the dystopia created by the grabby reptilians and generate a sustainable and non-extractive revenues through that process. Then you stop using the products developed by the grabby reptilians, and at last you launch some space exploration missions and identify the star systems from where they come from, and after that it can get quite ugly, but I'm not going to get into it. So for the purpose of this talk, though, I'm going to focus on the first 2 points here. So the first step to shifting the game is essentially shifting the organization. Transformative autonomous organizations are a possible key here. They are a new DAO subclass that includes 6 elements. So it's going to be very hard to explain all of this in this talk, so I'm going to briefly go through it. But one element is autonomous adaptivity, and within that, it's basically saying, structure is okay, hierarchy might be needed in some cases, but what is important is how it's governed, how the power structures are put in place and removed, and ultimately that's more of like a member democratic decision. Prioritizes human governance more so than shareholder-like governance. And within that, there's also this concept of how organizations can form coalitions called super DAOs. That's just the working name for now. Another element is anonymous functioning. This is very absent in the DAO world, and it will take some time for a DAO to come to life because it's unsolved in many ways. So. But anonymous functioning means that the organization is anonymous by default, yet it can selectively disclose information, especially when the transparency is important when it comes to revealing power structures, for example. The third element is labor dissolution. It's like, do we should we be working for the rest of our lives? How do we get rid of work? If it's not an active component of an organization, like, when is it ever going to happen? So DAOs are interested in exploring how one dissolves labor. It can start with redefining like the 40-hour work week or what have you. Another component is cosmic stewardship. And this means that organizations, they ideally have a more symbiotic relationship with the resources of the cosmos, Earth being within the cosmos, but, you know, understanding that there is much more beyond Earth too. And if organizations, you know, beyond the ones that are in power today contributing to the development of space, like SpaceX, Blue Origin, the, you know, top nation states with space programs, if they're the only ones contributing to it, you know, it's a very potentially dystopian future. So how do we get another body that's also contributing to that? And then another component is a synergetic coexistence. Basically, DAOs aim to cooperate with other DAOs as opposed to compete, and they have clear pathways for participation, because essentially they're part of a network that has a lot of common principles or elements, and one of those principles is let's find ways to cooperate first. And then the last element has to do with autarkic experimentation, and that's basically DAOs, they embrace being a part of an evolving experiment in organization design and alternative economics, because they want to exist in like parallel societies. So, it has to do with self-administration, self-reliance. So these 6 elements essentially establish the boundary conditions for an organization that is intent on minimizing the dystopia created by the grabby reptilians. So we can get into the next component now, which is the Super DAO Fund. Can use a better name at some point. But basically, now that we have defined a DAO, like how does this come together to create a large-scale network that can minimize dystopia? There's 5 potential steps to this process, and I'll go into them now. So first, everyone, there's basically a general assembly organized. There has to be at least one DAO that exists first, and it says, hey, you know, let's come together and figure out how we can reduce the power that grabby reptilians have on society, you know. But it doesn't exactly know the answers for how to do that yet. Like what are the main components, the main initiatives to focus on first. So there's a general assembly organized. People are invited to present solutions there, present ideas for what is the most important initiative to focus on. And basically, at the end of this process, this is still a very vague point, still needs to be figured out how, you know, the voting mechanism, or, you know, how the community is going to filter what these 5 initiatives are. But the main importance here is to keep it simple, like keep it within the cognitive load of the community. But, you know, just try to select 5. It doesn't have to be perfect, but the end conclusion is just choosing 5 where the community can start to then divide into other DAOs. So basically, once the 5 initiatives are selected, it's not going to be one organization that's trying to tackle solving all of those initiatives at once. This is where an independent DAO will be created for each initiative. So, for example, one initiative can be let's build an alternative to Amazon. Or another initiative can be let's you know, build a really more, you know, private social network. But it can be like these specific, like, you know, products or infrastructure challenges that the network would separate out into. And in addition to that, there would be a special projects organization, which would be the catalyzing DAO, just so there is still some freedom to work on projects outside of the 5 importantly defined ones. So what's going to happen after these like 6 DAOs are formed is they're going to come together and decide on 4 parameters. And one is going to be, because they're going to launch a very massive fundraising campaign. So one is going to be the minimum contribution amount, the maximum contribution amount, the target number of contributors, and the target treasury amount. So those basically define the parameters of the fundraising campaign, which I'll start to get into next. But the purpose of the talk was, it's like large scale network. So it's trying to be designed around a lot of people putting in a small amount of money, as opposed to how some DAOs work today, where right now a lot of the DAOs are funded with VC token sales for equity, and then you sort of have these distributions where it's like 10% investors, 10% team. It's just trying to rewire that completely. So it's like, how can people get involved in funding organizations at the earlier stage, and how can we do it in this scale where there is actually like a way to shift the power. So in these visuals, you're seeing the power of 100 million, I'm calling them loons, because the narrative here was, okay, if at least 1.3% of the Earth human population believed in the existence of reptilians like I do, we may be successful in creating this fund. If people are like, let's actually figure out how do we identify like the existence of reptilians? How do we truly identify the existence of aliens? These are questions that typically only like large governments can go after, or people don't even want to put that much money towards it. But they are interesting questions of our time, and interesting questions that can potentially result in large amounts of people organizing to contribute towards getting those answers. So in 2021 in the global VC market, the size of the global VC market was $621 billion. So we don't really need billionaires to solve our world's problems. We need to figure out how can you mobilize a lot of people to realize they actually have a lot of power together with a small amount of money, whether it's $100, $1,000. It's like there are these rivaling funds that can be created that can then proliferate new organizations that are not the Delaware C Corp. So if many people in the world believe corporations are evil, venture capitalists are evil, billionaires are evil, then wouldn't they want to create something to counterbalance that force? So this is sort of partially a thought experiment for why not? Because we do spend, $235 billion a year on candy. So can't we just like redirect some of that maybe towards creating an alternative fund that can change how we work together? Okay, so back to reality of how this will work. So the participants in this system, I'm calling them energy generators, or the generators. So they offer crypto energy into the super DAO, and they decide how much will go to each different DAO. So say you're putting in $100, you can still choose from those initiatives which ones you align with the most. So, sort of like you can say $20 to DAO 1, DAO 2, etc. You can do something equal, or you can just say, okay, $100 to a single DAO. And what will happen, though, is this fundraising campaign will also be occurring in the dark. So the fundraising campaign has these parameters of what the success condition is. For example, it can be the success. We will reach success when 100 million contributors have put money into the system, or we've reached $10 billion. But no one will know how many people are putting money in and how much money has been raised until that success condition has been met. Because I thought it would be kind of like a mysterious element to add that we can experiment with to see if it might it might work. And I think it also will test out these anonymity features of DAOs more, which I think will be nice. So basically, generators can exit the super DAO while it's still in this energy generation phase. Maybe it takes 5 years, but it's just like you can sort of commit your $100, but it exists in this like escrow-like system, which you can also withdraw from until basically the fundraising success scenario is reached. But once that is reached, the money gets channeled to each of the 6 DAOs. So basically, what this is representing is like, there's only one vote that these 100 million people are gonna do, because governance is hard, getting people to vote is hard. For this system, all people are doing is showing up and voting once. But then they can go and participate in the other DAOs in deeper ways. So then the DAOs will perform the R&D or extend gifts to other DAOs. So whenever people are putting money into the DAO, there's no expectation that the DAOs are going to actually give any gifts back, but basically it's a gift economy, and that can happen. But as far as like the DAO activation goes, there's this component of the DAOs contributing to a digital commons as far as where the knowledge is held. So then if there are some crossovers in information, it's being shared. So this is like has elements of cosmo-localism with like design global, manufacture local. So as far as the gift flow goes, if the DAO, if these energy generators actually did fund a DAO that, for example, ended up having a token, there's like a culture of reciprocity that exists within the system. So for example, they would get an airdrop back, but there is nothing that sort of ties it in as far as the code of how this works, because the timeline between those 2 stages, it's not really, it could be a long timeline. So it's sort of leaving things a bit more loose. So to close this off, like new technologies and coordination mechanisms, it can unlock the capacity for humans to connect and cooperate more like a mycelial network. Plants don't use legal contracts or smart contracts to force cooperative behaviors among their ecosystem participants. They exist in more naturally reciprocal ecosystems. So the loose laws of nature include chaos, weather patterns that contribute to cycles of death and rebirth. So the conclusion here is that through large-scale networks of cooperation that are more free and loose like nature, grabby reptilian power networks can be neutralized. So, yeah, so the views here are presented my own. They don't necessarily represent everyone in the Black Sky community. We want to catalyze a super DAO eventually, though. I'm not sure if this mission exactly will be approved, but the first step is basically getting the Black Sky DAO going, because there has to be at least one organization that's starting and saying, let's try to do this. If you'd like to get involved, you can reach out to Lyra of Black Sky there. And lastly, you can read more about DAOs in Black Sky Nexus here. It doesn't explain this energy generation aspect. That's still a new article that needs to be written, but it does describe the 6 elements more. Thank you.